Our speaker is Vice President for Zebra Sports, the official on-field player tracking provider for the NFL, where he leads team strategy and engagement directly with the NFL, NCAA, and other sports around the globe to use statistical, analytical, and player tracking performance data and technologies to work more efficiently and have more informed decision-making. Over his career, he's held various leadership roles in product marketing and management and business development, and provided consulting services in the consumer goods, enterprise technology, and sports industries, working with Ray-Ban sunglasses, Coca-Cola, Johnson & Johnson, Oracle, Microsoft, the NBA, Major League Baseball, the PGA Tour, NASCAR, Indy car racing, and the NFL. While at Microsoft, he invented the ICE player and team evaluation video and analytics platform that was used by the 2010 Super Bowl champion New Orleans Saints. Stats LLC acquired this solution and hired him to start and lead a new business unit called the Sports Solution Group to combine innovative technologies and advanced analytics to deliver revolutionary strategic benefits and operational value to league, college, team, and media clients such as ESPN and NBC Sports. As an industry consultant, he worked closely with NFL and NCAA coaching staffs and personnel departments and on-air talent, helping them derive insights to aid in game planning and strategy, self-scouting, and player evaluation, along with roster evaluation. Finally, our speaker is a frequent guest commentator on SiriusXM's NFL channel, national podcasts such as Next Pats from NBC Boston, Future Sports, and television broadcasts, including Bloomberg's Fast Money. He is regularly sought for commentary and opinions from the New York Times, Fox Sports, Sports Illustrated, and ESPN. His sports analytics have been publicized in Wall Street Journal, LA Times, and Washington Post, Chicago Trib, and Philadelphia Inquirer and the Dallas Morning News, while his career arc is highlighted in the best-selling book, Take Your Eye Off the Ball, by highly regarded NFL analyst and former team executive, Pat Kerwin. Joining us from Beverly Hills, let's have an analytics-defined welcome for John Pollard.
Thank you, buddy. Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you all. And it's a real pleasure to present to you and your club. Jennifer, nice to see you as well. And thank you. I'm glad you found that the talk that I gave a couple of months ago, or a month or so ago in Kirkland, was interesting. And so I'm going to start sharing my screen, and if I can ensure that I have it here. So can someone let me know if they can see it?
Yes.
Great. I'm going to go into slideshow mode. Well, no, I'm not going to do that. Let's see here. Bear with me 1 second while I reverse. This is the trick of presenting on the road from a hotel room. Excuse me, guys. Okay. I apologize. I have some allergies here, and it's starting to bother my throat just as I start presenting. So I'm going to go through a discussion of what we do in the NFL with Zebra Technologies, but I'm also going to talk about Zebra Technologies as a company and introduce you to the things that we do as a company in different industries other than sports. First off, I'm going to draw my career path to Zebra just briefly. As Buddy had mentioned, I started my career in the consumer products marketing space with Ray-Ban sunglasses, placing products on athletes and different celebrities in movies such as Men in Black in 1997. And that was in a way to get Ray-Ban sunglasses promoted and differentiated from other products, sunglass products in the market space. We also did lots of Olympic games. I noted a few on the slide here. After Ray-Ban, I started working in the technology space with consumer products analytics with companies like Oracle Corporation, and started doing analytics for consumer products companies and large retailers like Walmart. And ultimately, I ran into a role with Coca-Cola, where I worked at Coca-Cola with that brand team, working on different flavors of Coca-Cola that we now enjoy on the shelf space. And then ultimately I got to Microsoft, and Buddy described how I went from Microsoft to Stats to now Zebra. And I only wanted to offer this up because this is kind of a theme from my career that I like to share with student groups that I speak to, even my own children, as they think about what they want to do with their careers. My path in my career was not linear. I didn't have a specific target I was shooting for. I knew I wanted to work in sports ultimately, and I went back and forth from marketing to technology, and ultimately found the role that I'm in now at Zebra. So I always encourage people to dream big, work in spaces that you find interested in and you have passion for, and then continue to strive to do better in your jobs. And so I'm finding that here at Zebra as well. But it's always an exciting time looking back over the last 30 years and seeing how I got to where I am today. And it was through a lot of help of great mentors, lots of great teammates, but also staying creative and staying curious about what you might be able to do your job better each and every day. So Zebra Technologies is a company that's been around for almost 50 or a little over 50 years, and it's a publicly traded company. We all probably experience some form of Zebra Technologies in our everyday life. Zebra works in mobile computing, barcoding, industrial printing, RFID technologies, and also location services, which is where the sports business resides inside the company. Just for real world applications, when you rent a car and you get a printed a receipt, typically that's a Zebra printer. When you go to the grocery store and the checker is scanning your groceries across the red lighted box area, a lot of times that's Zebra Technologies, not just in grocery stores, but in large retailers like Target, for instance, or Walmart. We also have scanning capabilities for inventory control needs in places like Amazon, FedEx, and USPS use us to scan various pieces of mail or packages just to track where things are and make sure that those packages are distributed and they land to the intended person accurately. And then location services, again, we work in healthcare and retail and operations logistics, where we use RFID technology, which is what I'll speak a lot about today, to identify things like in a hospital environment, IV poles, or different types of medical carts that move from room to room or different areas inside of a hospital. Also, ID badges in places like healthcare or secure area. Credentialing is another large area where Zebra participates and is a category leader around the world. As I mentioned, we work in different segments. Sports and entertainment is where I spend most of my time. And in sports, we basically took the core competencies that I just described in terms of locationing and asset tracking and industrial, and pointed those capabilities towards the sports industry. And now that's manifested in us being the official league partner in tracking all players and the ball and the referees on the field for each and every game in the NFL over the past 7 seasons. And as I mentioned, 2020 was the 7th season where we tracked, where we served as the official league partner for the NFL. And just for some interesting numbers, last year, over 2,800 players were tracked with our RFID tags. And we had all the footballs also have an RFID tag. And if you see on the graphic in the shoulder area, the tags are about the diameter of a US nickel on the players, and about the thickness of 2 nickels stacked together, and each player wears 2 tags. And I'll get into a little bit more detail about that. The tags emit a signal 12 times a second, so you can identify the players on the field and what they're doing on the field in terms of their activity and workload. The RFID tag and the ball is pictured in the lower part of the graphics, where you see the nickel next to the black round tag is the player tag, and the tag above that with the plastic perimeter is the ball tag. And we have a tag in all the NFL footballs that tracks the velocity, rotational information, and we can also derive height for every pass and kick. In addition to being the player tracking technology part of the NFL, that means we're in all the NFL stadiums are in the US, also the stadiums in the UK when international games are played, and Azteca Stadium in Mexico City. Additionally, with the game stadiums, we also have 10 teams in the NFL who use the same system that's in the stadiums at their practice facilities to track their players' efforts and workload during practice using our tags. And we like to say the 2020 year was a very good year for us at Zebra, where 5 of our team clients participated in the NFL playoffs. Quickly, how the system works, as I mentioned, the players have tags in their shoulder pads. In practice environments, when they're not wearing shoulder pads, the tags are actually sewn into the compression shirts that they typically wear, or their practice jerseys. So whether it's the stadium or in the practice facility, the system works the same way. The RFID tags send a signal to a series of receiver boxes that are permanently installed inside the perimeter of a stadium or at the practice facility, around the field, or in their indoor facilities. And in image number 2, you see a picture of those receiver boxes. While those signals are being collected from the tags and the players and the ball, we have a crew of 3 people for every game who are working to gather the information and make sure that the signals are being transmitted correctly, and that they're also in charge of making sure that the data feed is going to the NFL, who then distributes it to the teams the day after a game. Additionally, for us as fans, when you watch a game and you hear next-gen statistics, which is talked about a lot during games nowadays, the last couple of years, we are the enabling technology that's gathering that information to create the next-gen stats service for the NFL. And that is also important that our game day crew, who are at all the stadiums for every single game, are ensuring that the data feed is continuous and quality, so that the graphics can be populated appropriately during the game. Let's talk about the tags for a moment. As I mentioned, where the tags are placed on the players or on either side of the shoulder pad, information that's tracked for the players is things like how far they travel for a play or a series of plays, their acceleration rates and deceleration information, their proximity, how far they are from each other in terms of teammates or their opponents. Also, we can find out their time on the field. And so that's a significant amount of information that's not only important for games to create the next-gen stats service and these really cool analytics. That information is also critically important in the practice environment, where teams are making sure that the players are developed and trained appropriately, and also working them out in a manner that mitigates any type of soft tissue injury, but also prepares them for optimal performance on game day. The ball tag itself, as I mentioned, we record velocity, rotational information in terms of RPM, and also we can derive height information for all passes and kicks. This is a bit of an eye chart, but ultimately what happens is the data that we collect, for a team that uses this in their practice facility and for the game, they look at the information, teams will look at the information on their own software and software that we provide them to analyze the practice data. And what's really a trend now in the NFL is that teams are using the tracking data from the game that the league provides. Even though our system is collecting it, the league provides it to the teams and integrates that data, game data, with game video. Teams are now trying to draw correlations with how much workload they have in their practice environment, how much training they do, and their effectiveness on the field. And it's an emerging trend in the NFL to utilize tracking data, again, to better develop the players and train players, and also to prolong their careers, and also health and safety implications are involved as well. As I just mentioned, why teams are interested, and the league is interested in monitoring, using player tracking, is to monitor player health and safety, and to measure their activity. Again, you have a player coming back from injury, for instance. Teams want to be very cautious about bringing those players back in a pragmatic and safe way. So the tracking data gives them that granular, subjective information that they can use to determine the player's readiness for each game. Technology that's existing in sports. So tracking technology in sports has been around for quite some time. And for context, there are 3 primary technologies that are used in the world of sports, for all sports, not just in the NFL. We're RFID, so radio frequency identification. There's also GPS and optical technology that are used for different sports. The big differentiator between all 3 of those technologies is, for RFID, as I mentioned, you have tags that are communicating to local receiver boxes. And that gives us great accuracy, sub just a couple of inches for every single play or practice repetition. Also, the data is readily available because, again, we're relying on a local area of communication tools and services. Where GPS and optical, well, GPS is using the satellites that encircle the Earth. There are larger devices. Lots of teams in other sports like soccer and rugby around the world use GPS, but the accuracy, because they're reliant on the signals from the satellite to the tags or the device that the players are wearing, their variability can be almost 39 inches, which is over a yard. And if you're familiar with American football, a yard is really important in terms of measurement. Optical tracking you see a lot in tennis and golf, and that utilizes shape recognition and machine learning and algorithms to identify things. And optical's challenges in the world of American football comes from the fact that when players get close together and the ball itself, it's difficult to identify things. So our RFID technology at Zebra is really the premium technology to use for accurate tracking. And that's why we're the proud partner of the NFL for this many years. Some of the information, just wanted to show you a couple of visuals that we have in terms of how we translate the information. So the data that we collect is voluminous. It can be translated in Excel spreadsheets or various other fixed reports. But what we're finding is for teams who really want to use the information and utilize the knowledge from the information in communicating with their players, you have to use a lot of data visualization. So these are just some examples we're showing of the type of visualizations that are all automatically collected but through the use of our RFID tags. We at Zebra provide a software package to all the teams that use us in their practice environment, and these are some of the reports that they generate. Now, even though these are fixed reports or fixed images that you're seeing on the screen, they're interactive as well. So the application itself that the teams have, they can click on any one of these spaces or colored dots and go right to game video, which is really the lifeblood of all sports analysis, is looking at practice or game video and doing assessments. And so to get more adoption and utilization and benefits out of the data, teams like to have these visualizations and then marry our data with the game video or practice video. Here's a few other couple of examples. Some of the things I'm showing you here 10 years ago were all manually collected. Now it's all automatically done for in the NFL. There used to be a manual process to develop charts like this. And so what coaching staffs across the NFL are enjoying is a lot more time to do strategic and impactful things versus administrative things in developing and gathering all this information and building reports.
Fascinating.
And well, for those sports fans, I'll just say one of the things that's really been great is I grew up really enjoying all sports, but I love the NFL. And I grew up hearing terms like a player has great instincts or game speed, or that player has a nose for the ball. And we hear on any broadcast, a quarterback has great pocket awareness. What I really enjoy about what our information is providing, not only the league, but the players and the coaching staffs, is that we take those descriptors and we provide objective, quantifiable, real data around it. So this has helped teams really quantify a player's capabilities and skills, and helps the players develop, over a long period of time. It's also helped players who are towards the end of their career prolong their career because they actually had information on players. Those players had information that backed up the fact that they still had capabilities and still could do it on the field. And so that's some of the most enjoyable things about the work that we do, is seeing the players' excitement about the information. They're all competitive. They enjoy seeing the data for themselves, but also the teams are really excited to have this information as they, again, build their rosters and try to strive for the Super Bowl championship. And I want to get down to a couple of quick slides to illustrate what this information is, and then I'll wrap it up for some questions, because there's typically lots of questions. An old box score before tracking data, this is just one example. A running back could have one rush attempt, and the rushing yards could be 10 yards, and perhaps he scored a touchdown. When you add our data or our technology to that story, you can see that we can collect the top speed for that runner, how many defenders on the opposing team were in the box, meaning close to the line of scrimmage to defend the run, the actual distance that the player took to rush. He actually ran 1.89 yards to gain a yard, and we could automatically collect the personnel packages and other schematic information quickly. And so that's just one basic example of how much new dimension our data and our technology can bring to the game by expanding the box score. And of course, again, we're finding that fans are really engaging with the content, as is the NFL. Is really expanded their next gen stats service, again, not to just have a website where teams can go and peruse the data and fans themselves, but if you watch a broadcast, all the large broadcast partners are now making next gen stats part of the typical presentation and storytelling part of the game. And with that, I'll open it up to questions.
John, there was one question in the chat. How are the tags built to withstand all the shocks?
That's a great question. So they're engineered in a casing that we've never had a tag fail due to impact. So they are layered inside the shoulder pads, and of course with non-padded practices, they're not having a lot of contact. And so there's a plastic casing around the mechanics and the engineering part of the tag itself, and that keeps it safe. Interestingly enough, in a practice environment, they also, because to kind of talk about how well they're designed, the tags can be washed and dried. So when they take the practice shirt off or the compression shirt off, the equipment managers can just throw them into the washing machine and dry them, and they last an entire season.
Great. Brad Davis, you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Sorry, it took me a second there. John, fantastic presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Two quick questions. Number one of the hair pulling out experiences you have in watching an NFL game is the spotting of the ball after forward progress. You know, you got these 75-year-old referees who maybe do or don't watch the play and the spot is awful. How can your technology in the ball assist in that? My second question is, as an investment opportunity, once you've sold your product to the entire NFL, MLB, NBA, where's it going? You're at 508 right now, with a nice advance in the last year or two. What's the opportunity for growth?
Great question. Both great questions. In terms of spotting the ball, I have to be very judicious and pragmatic in answering this question. I get asked this a lot during interviews. As I mentioned, the RFID technology is accurate within a couple of inches. There are also tags in the pylons in the end zone, and tags on the referees, and tags in the sideline markers. And the NFL is evaluating our technology as well as others to find ways to potentially enhance the processing and the management administration of the game. I will say that we're not directly involved in those discussions. That's an NFL league only discussion, but we are providing data for them to research that. I will say this, technically it is feasible to leverage our technology or a combination of technologies to help enhance and expedite the spotting of the ball. And is there a future where I think that could happen? Yes, I do. But I also have great respect for the NFL and the other sport leagues, and from collegiate to pro around the world, where it's very exciting on the technology side to see what our technology can do and think about the future. But these leagues have been around for a very long time, and when they have to consider competitive play, fair balance, the integrity of the game, we have to be very patient and, again, thoughtful about the administration and introducing these new ideas. So do I think there's a future where someone crosses a goal line and all of a sudden, similar to a hockey goal, the end zone lights up? Yeah, I think the future's out there. I wouldn't dare to put a date on that, but I think it's out there, and technically, again, it is feasible to explore. In terms of growth, we are certainly working on the collegiate ranks. Our tracking technology is being used by another major college who I cannot share, but their lacrosse teams are using it. So we are looking to expand, not just in football, but we are looking in the major college football. We're also looking at other sports like hockey and field-based sports like soccer and rugby and Australian rules football. We get a lot of attention from those leagues around the world because, again, it's field-based. It's more similar to the NFL game. So we're looking to expand as we speak. And one of the reasons why I'm in Los Angeles this weekend.
John, could you do us a favor and stop sharing your screen so we can see you better?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
No, that's okay. It's
Yes.
just that way we can see you better. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, next question from Ernie Furtado. You want to unmute yourself?
Yes, thanks, John. Great presentation. Question, in baseball now you hear a lot about exit velocity, launch angle. Do you know what technology they're using for that? And do you have any involvement with Major League Baseball?
Yes, so they're using what I mentioned, the three technologies. They're using optical tracking technology. Because the players are so spaced out on the field and the pace of play is much more differentiated than that of football or a rugby situation, that they're using cameras that are placed around the stadium to track all that information. However, what I can share with you is that we have had conversations with not just Major League Baseball, but other baseball programs and leagues in the minor league level. And if you're keeping an eye on the news recently in baseball, there's been a crackdown that's happening as we speak about substances on the ball with the pitchers. And we have been contacted by different baseball groups about evaluating is there some type of RFID tag that would be different than the ones in the players? Is there a different type of RFID tag that we might have that could help identify or at least track the balls before the game and know where they are during the game? And I mean, we've had great success helping the NFL with that, since our ball tag does give you on-field statistics. It also can be tracked, when it's around the perimeter, so they can just make sure where the balls are on the field. So it's early stages, but I think the timing is really interesting, where what you're seeing happening in the news today, we've been contacted, but it's early stage discussions, and maybe sometime in the future we'll participate more with Major League Baseball.
Great, thank you, John.
Sure.
Skip McCowan, you have a question?
I do. John, looking at the slide that you showed on Sonny Michael, and I think it showed he had to go 1.89 yards to gain a yard. Is your system and the data that you provide being used by football teams to determine, for instance, how far back from the line of scrimmage a running back should set up before the ball is snapped to maximize potentially when the hole's going to open up and things like that?
Yes, great question, Skip. So yes, they can use the information to find out the depth of the running back, and that 1.89 yards is actually a really interesting next gen statistic. So that's called run efficiency in the next gen stats lexicon. So running, they can quantify if a running back is a downhill runner, meaning if to gain a yard, are they running somewhere near a yard to gain a yard? So they're running more in a straight line fashion. And you have some running backs, just by their style or the actual game plan and scheming of their team, they might run maybe 1.89 yards or 2.1 yards to gain a yard, because they're moving along the line of scrimmage looking for an open hole. So yes, the run efficiency is really helpful for the coaching staffs to educate and coach their running backs to run more efficiently downhill, if I may, in a straight line fashion, to hit their holes as quick as they can. But you hit it right on the head. They can determine the depth of the running back, but also the spacing of the splits for the offensive linemen. And they can use some of the visualizations that you saw on one of the slides. They can identify at the moment the running back gets to the line of scrimmage what the actual space of the hole opportunity is. And so the more advanced teams are using lots of research and work in determining how to use this information to better game plan and scheme.
Thanks, John. Next question is from Jamie Texter.
Hi, John. Thanks for speaking to us. This is great.
Thank you.
I have two for one. Again, questions for you. One is, I'm wondering about quantifying impact, if that can be done by the change in velocity or the directional change in velocity of the player. These chips serve as sort of an accelerometer, right? So can impact be quantified? That's one. And two, who are you sharing this data with? You guys own the data. I know you're sharing it with the league. Are you sharing it with academics as well, and people that are outside of the NFL that want to enhance player safety or anything else?
Super question. I love doing presentations like this to new groups, and it's an excellent question. So the chip itself, the tags and the players, do not calculate force. You identified, and I got a big smile because there is an accelerometer in the tag. That's how we're gathering some of this information, but we do not calculate force. However, since we know the weight of the players, how far they are from each other, and when there is a contact, with their velocity and the distance they travel to connect, that certainly those are ingredients that could feed any of the analysis for the NFL if they want to do from a safety perspective. So that information is being leveraged in some form for the NFL. It is influencing gameplay changes that we've seen even recently with the NFL kickoff rules changing. The tracking data helped inform that change in rules because they wanted to reduce injuries, which were significant during kickoff plays. So there's that piece. And then, so what was the second question again, if you could repeat it?
Are you sharing the data?
Oh yeah,
with others, with others that don't have a commercial interest in the players?
Yeah, it's interesting. So we actually don't own the data. That's really leads to an interesting point. We are the service provider for the league. So we use the technologies being used, we gather it, we refine it, and we push it back to the NFL. And so for the game data, the NFL actually owns the data and they determine where to send it, whether it be to a broadcast partner or a data partner or to a sponsor to leverage for monetization purposes. In the practice environment, the team, where we have an independent relationship with a team like the Los Angeles Rams, we work with them and the teams own the data. And we help them manage and assess that data. So we really do not own any distribution rights. There's lots of reasons for that. One, there's a monetization opportunity for either the team or the league, and we don't participate in that. And secondly, as you can imagine, there are some health implications here, health and safety implications, and so there's liability issues as well. So it's all it's anonymized data where we don't own it or redistribute it all. We're just the enabling technology. That's a super question. We get asked that a lot, but it's a critical thing to talk about. It's interesting. We empower and we enable, but we do not distribute and monetize.
You guys have contracts with how many teams? I'm sorry, tell me again.
10 teams. I can mention some of them. Some of them don't like to say that they're using anything because they like to stay secretive. But the Los Angeles Rams, the New Orleans Saints, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Green Bay Packers are a few of our teams that we have, and we love working with those organizations.
And then the league came along secondarily and said, and we want to piggyback and get a second contract for the league on those 10 teams data. Is that how it works? It
actually started with the league through an RFP process. They learned what we did in industrial environments with RFID tracking and asked if we could use those core competencies and expertise for sports. And we customized a deal with the league, and then the teams followed. So it started with the league and then teams came behind that.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question is from Dan Herbert.
Jamie asked a number of my questions. Thanks, John. Are these passive or active tags?
They're active tags on the players. That's a great question. Passive. Passive. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
They're individualized as well, obviously.
Yes. Each tag, pair of tags are assigned to the players. The ball tags also have identifiers as well. And for the rest of the group, passive you'll find in more like clothing or manufacturing environments where we don't need to get pure deep analytics on it. We just need to know where things are, if they leave an environment or moved from one environment to another. Those are passive tags that you see more in a retail or manufacturing environment.
So your readers are along the side of the field, or kind of like where are the readers picking up the data?
Yeah, usually on the 200 or 300 level of a stadium. You get to go into a stadium when we're back in the stadiums this year, which I think, and if you look up around the cement area, you'll find our, I like to call them lunch boxes. You'll find us around the perimeters, about 20 receivers in a typical NFL stadium.
So obviously, since you're individualized, you can, are the tags the same? In other words, do they all produce the same amount of data? Or, for example, does a lineman, they don't need to produce, some of the data that a running back would need to produce?
Right. Actually, that's a great question. So the tags are all the same tags. They are gathering all the same information, but you bring up a really interesting point and a very critical point and timely. Offensive line and defensive line metrics. And for the group, wide receivers and running backs and defensive, they're running in large spaces and covering lots of ground and have lots of accelerations and high energy moments. Offensive and defensive linemen, certainly a lot of high energy, but in a much more consolidated space in small spaces. And so what our practice clubs, our clients, as well as even the teams that we don't work with directly, we're all looking at whether they use our technology or a different technology in their practice facility, ways to quantify useful analytics for offensive linemen in particular, and also defensive linemen. There is some more with defensive linemen, particularly edge rushers who rush the quarterbacks and try to sack the quarterbacks, that they can gather, but it's still an evolving and emerging thing, is trying to determine how to use this information most effectively for offensive linemen, and no one's quite cracked that code yet.
It's interesting, the active tags are interesting because you don't have to worry about anti-collision technology with the same kind of tags. So I don't mean collision in football. I mean collision of all the data that's coming in through, over the pipeline. Interesting, John. Congratulations. It's really fun stuff.
Thank you very much. If I can watch ESPN or go to a football game and say I'm working, I guess if I was 8 years old and someone told me, can you do that when you're 52? I would have said yes. I'm fortunate to be here.
Yeah.
Next question is from Buddy.
Yeah, another twofer here. Question number one. Football is a game of millimeters, right? Like when you're talking first downs, touchdowns, where on the ball are the tags? And then secondly, what's some of the most surprising statistics you've learned from some, say, offensive linemen? Like, for example, like, say, I don't know, pick one like a David DeCastro, somebody like that. What have you found surprising there?
Well, for the offensive lineman, I would, and David's a real example. Though the blocks happen right near the line of scrimmage, right? You find that as the play activates, how fast you'll hear a broadcaster say, well, that blocker, that offensive lineman gets to the second level, meaning he comes off the line of scrimmage and he moves downfield to continue blocking and prolong and elongate the play. So to find how much some of these and how fast these large gentlemen at 300 plus pounds, how athletic they are and how quick they can get downfield is really, for me, the people know this visually. The experts, the coaches, and the scouts have known this for years. And now what our data is providing them is a way to really support and validate that general idea that, oh, that blocker gets off his blocks and gets to the second level and prolongs the play. We can now quantify that. And truly, David's one of those, top tier offensive linemen that gets downfield, stays on blocks, and hits more, gets to more people and continues to create more plays for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
That's why he's all pro, right?
Yes, that's exactly right.
And he has good genes too. He really does have good genes.
super player. But I think, just the largeness of the offensive linemen and defensive linemen interior, they are just so quick and explosive. We see the wide receivers run down the field and wow, that's amazing, right? Or the running back, have a 80-yard touchdown run. Those offensive and defensive linemen are just as explosive in the context of their size and the requirements of their position. And buddy, would you mind repeating that first question?
Where is the tags on the ball?
Yeah, ball tag. So this is interesting. You can imagine we went through a lot of R&D in the ball tag process. You can't hear the ball. The ball itself, just for context, weighs 400 grams. The ball tag weighs a little less than 4 grams, so less than 1% of the ball. And it was in all different places in R&D. Ultimately, what we found is if you working with Wilson Sporting Goods and with support of the NFL, with that plastic ring around the tag, it gets melded in the rubber bladder during the manual construction of the football. And if you look at a NFL football from the outside, the NFL shield, the tag is right underneath that.
So if you're going for first down, it might not be there, but the nose of the ball might be across the line.
Well, it's a great point, buddy. We are looking through, not just with the NFL on our own, doing some research and testing with multiple tags, because as I mentioned, we talked about a few minutes ago, is there a future where we can help enhance spotting or potentially identifying the ball across the goal line? Yeah, technically it's feasible. And so we're looking for ways to, continue to innovate with the technology. One thing about the ball across the goal line, I always get caught up on this one. We don't have tags that can tell you when a player's elbow hits the ground or a knee hits the ground. So the ball across the goal line is just part of the challenge you're trying to work with.
Thank you. Great job.
Thank you, buddy.
Okay, next question is from David Wall.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I took my hand off. So, because really mine had all to do with distribution rights and all the stuff that Jamie was going after. So the only add-on I had to that, which I put in the chat, is I saw when you were flipping through your slides, you had a Mahomes versus Brady. So are you going to, for those of us who want to stay on at the end and see that, will you stay on and show that?
I'm so glad you mentioned that. Yes, I'm happy to stay on and share with you a couple of more slides. I wanted to be very cautious, and respectful of your time. But typically my conversations go well over an hour, and I'm happy to spend a few more minutes with the group and show you some really interesting visuals. I like to try to just get to the meat of it and get it, but there's a lot more to the story that's going on. But happy to show you that, because I will say this: each year at the Super Bowl we have a press conference, and we do a bit of a scouting report using the next gen statistics and to the media. And a lot of the data that we picked out this year really translated in what we saw in the game and how it unfolded for the Buccaneers. So happy to talk a few more minutes after the meeting.
Okay, thanks. Next question, Pat Flaherty.
Hi, John. Thank you. And thanks for having the 49ers on one of your slides. Can you take this technology to the tennis world, not only for the players as well as for the lines and the calling of in and outs balls?
Yes, Pat, it's feasible to use our technology in those environments. Our tag, you know, with the tennis ball being smaller scale, I think we'd have to research more into miniaturizing an RFID tag for the ball. However, as I mentioned, the three technologies, tennis uses the optical system. And because you're looking at 2 players or in doubles, 4 players on a court and a ball, optical is actually quite an effective technology for tennis. That's a highly accurate system. I'm familiar with the technology and the company that they use in the USTA. And so it's pretty effective. I think it's one of those where if it isn't broke, don't fix it. So, you know, so feasibly, yes, we could tag that. We could tag the players. We haven't miniaturized a tag that could potentially work inside of a ball, but I think they're having great success with their optical system, and I think that makes sense for them.
Thank you.
Thanks. And one last question from Rich Shearer.
Good morning. My turn to be the Debbie Downer and turn the direction a little bit. I listened to your presentation and one thing kept going through my mind, and that was 1984. The potential for use and misuse of this technology in all kinds of privacy shattering ways is out. The potential seems obvious to me. Is that anything in the industry that you're aware of where folks who maybe we don't want using this kind of technology are trying to obtain it and use it for tracking people in ways that we'd really rather they not be tracking?
It's a great question. You know, there is still our deal with the NFL. There are lots of, you can imagine, lots of legal you know, gates and that are appropriately in place. You know, there was concern, not just in general, in collecting athlete data. I've been in this for 15 plus years, and so I've seen an evolution of it. When anything new has come, there's a bit of a hesitancy, but ultimately it's a series of trade-offs for the benefit of using technology and information versus, you know, do I just stay with what we have? And the potential benefits were far outweighed everything else. And so we still, our deal with the NFL, I'm satisfied as they are, because we've been a partner for many years, that the appropriate gates and protections are in there in terms of the data being involved. Now, I can tell you, I'm sure the NFL it's one of the reasons why we take the responsibility off of us of owning and distributing the data. We're not a sports data company. We're an enabling technology company. The NFL has, you know, the rights and the methods and mechanisms in place to appropriately distribute the data to the teams. On the team level, I would say we still to this day have conversations with players from the NFL Players Association who are interested in how this data is potentially being used as a way to monitor their career capability, their performance on the field, and potentially impact their career. I would say this: I'm a more optimistic person. The technology, the information isn't that there's a two-sided coin. We've had situations where players who were towards the end of their career, and just in terms of tenure, you know, 30 plus years old, running back, for instance, where our data actually illuminated the fact that the player still had court capabilities, was still explosive if his workload was managed appropriately, meaning, you know, a certain set of snaps or a certain time on the field, or used differently, or kind of titrated activity throughout the season. So we found actually the information has provided much more of a case for the players to train better, more specifically, and for the teams to look at players towards the tail end of their career with a more of an appreciation, because there's more quantifiable information available to assess the players. But it is an ongoing concern, and you have to have the appropriate methods in place, and just keep an eye on the fact that information can be very powerful, but if misused and not protected appropriately, it can also cause lots of challenges. We experience that as consumers, right? So it's part of our everyday conversation in one way or another, and certainly something we always have our eye on.
It's probably beyond the scope of your talk, but I'm also thinking in terms of use outside of sports. What if somebody wants to use this technology to keep track of everything Conrad Brees does in his life? Now, why anybody would want to know that, I don't know, but you know, again, going forward with that, I mean, I don't expect you to address that, but that's also what I'm thinking about.
I'd like to address it quickly. I may in a few seconds. We have why I'm here in Los Angeles too is I'm going to SoFi Stadium after our meeting here, and lots of the stadium operators want to tag the people that work in the stadium, the aisle people, the people distributing food or walking food around, the retail people, and in those cases we have run into a number of conversations about some of the unions or non-union people. They really want to understand how this technology is going to be used. We're in the early stages of this, but it's a really fair question. It's something I want to talk about. That it's not something we again dismiss or take lightly. In different environments, this is part of the conversation. There is some hesitancy and some skepticism in some worker ranks in different environments. And in sports, for me, it's the stadium operations people who are wondering what their management company is doing by tracking them. And I think that's up to the management company how to assuage their employees and to push that agenda.